The big story that we're tracking right now on US Election Watch, the Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris and her running mate Tim Walz took their campaign to Georgia on Wednesday. Remember, Georgia is one of the swing states that will have a very decisive role to play as to who now wins this race. Georgia, which Democrats narrowly secured in 2020, could be pivotal in this year's election. Their visit focused on energizing young voters. They hit the road in southern Georgia, focusing their efforts on areas with significant black population. The campaign has recently expanded its presence in this region, adding staff and opening new field offices. Liberty County, with a population of nearly 65,000 and around 40% being black, played a key role in the 2020 elections as well, where Democrat nominee Joe Biden won, having cast a strong majority of votes for Joe Biden.
This is no ordinary campaign bus. This armored vehicle, driven by US Secret Service agents, is part of Kamala Harris's bus tour through Georgia, a crucial swing state that the Democrats are keeping a close eye on. It can be recalled that President Joe Biden had won the critical battleground by a thin margin 4 years ago when he defeated former President Donald Trump. On a visit to a school, Harris exclaimed a group of excited children that the country is counting on them.
Our country is counting on you. All of you. You are leaders. By the very fact that you all are here in this room, doing what you do at this incredible school, doing it as one big team, understanding all of the different parts that fit together to create a team.
Georgia is located in southeastern United States and has one of the largest proportions of black residents. A third of the state's population is African American. Kamala Harris's campaign is hoping to woo these voters. According to reports, the Harris campaign is trying to make inroads in GOP strongholds and to use smaller settings to display a softer side of the ticket. Campaign officials have argued that in order to beat Trump in the state, a lot more is needed than Atlanta and the suburbs that delivered for Joe Biden in 2020. The strategy is to attract Republican Party-leaning voters through informal interactions. In a boost to her campaign, the latest Fox News poll shows Harris edging Trump in Georgia 50% to 48%. Meanwhile, experts say that the Indian-American community is set to play a crucial role in Georgia, as it is the largest Asian group in the state. In a close race, Indian Americans can make a big difference. Biden had won Georgia by a margin of just 12,000 votes last time. Kamala, who is Indian American, will keep one eye on the group, as a 2024 survey found that 55% of Indian Americans identify as Democrat and 25% as Republicans. However, the number of Indian Americans identifying as Republicans has been increasing since 2020. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
All right, to discuss this in greater detail and to talk about one of these battleground states, which is Georgia, let's get in Farooq Mughal, who's a Georgia state representative, joining us live from Atlanta. We also have Ashwin Ramaswamy, who's running for the Georgia State Senate. Good morning to both of you, and appreciate both of you joining me on this show. Let me start with you, Farooq. How do you see now this race going? It's now all about the battleground states. And let's talk about Georgia first. And let's focus on this. How do you see the campaign stacked up in this state?
Gauri, thank you for having me. I am State Representative Farooq Mughal, first elected Southeast Asian in the House. I'm super excited. I think what's happening in Georgia with our minority communities, especially with black voters, especially with Southeast voters. This has been an amazing experience of the president, the VP coming and visiting us. We have registered more volunteers. People are coming out, to vote and volunteer for the campaign. So we're actually super excited to have this, Kamala Harris visiting Georgia.
Ashwin Ramaswamy, comment on this as to what should be the priorities of the Kamala Harris campaign now for Georgia. It's a swing state. It will go down right till the wire. How do you see this playing out, and what should be her priorities?
So here's what I see in terms of priorities for the Harris campaign. The first thing is making sure reaching out to all voters who align with these kind of democratic values, really ensuring the Democratic base is energized and willing to turn out. And that's part of what we're seeing now, especially through her tour in the southern part of Georgia, is bringing a lot of voters who maybe typically haven't had the chance to meet presidential candidates, ensuring that they have a voice and reaching out to everyone. That's one piece. And the other piece here, which is really crucial, is reaching out to independent voters, people who are in the middle and just want candidacy. They want a president who is normal, who is able to deliver on what we need for our communities. And it's quite clear that that's what Kamala Harris is providing, as opposed to the Trump-Vance ticket. And that's her goal, and that's what we're working on the ground to ensure we can have that kind of contact.
And this is a question I want to ask both of you, which is about the Indian diaspora, which is about how Indian diaspora is a very significant constituency in Georgia, and how do they view Kamala Harris's campaign? How do they view what all she brings to the table, and her strategy like? Let's start with you, Farooq Mughal, and then we get an Ashwin also on this.
Absolutely. So, we have more than, 50,000, 75,000 South Asian, especially in the Indian community. Everybody is super excited. I think they can make a huge difference. Remember that President Biden actually got 12,000. The victory in Georgia was 12,000. And right now, the way I see it, when I'm campaigning, when I'm talking to people, it's been amazing. It's a lot of people are coming, especially the young generation are coming to volunteer. And I think they can be the margin of victory. You have the voters on the Republican side, you have the voters on the Democratic side. And I think the margin of victory will go towards what the Indian American, South Asian American community is going to do.
Ashwin, comment on that. Farooq also mentioned about some of the younger voters. You represent that age group. What is it that they are looking for in the campaigns, whether it's Harris or Trump? What is it that they want, and what could swing it in their favor?
So what we're looking for as young voters is really new leadership that's looking forward, not just looking at the next 2 years or the next 4 years, but thinking about these long-term investments in our communities. I'm 25 years old. I'm running to be Georgia's youngest state senator and the first Gen Z state senator. And what I've seen is the excitement on the ground has been not only from the South Asian and Indian American communities, which makes up a large portion of my district. Nearly 16,000 South Asians live in my district alone, which is larger than the margin of victory of Joe Biden in 2020. But people across different backgrounds are really excited to see someone who is from the area, grew up here, went to the schools, and is really deciding to come and give back, because that's the kind of perspective that we need. And that's something which it's really clear that the way the Harris-Walz campaign is working, the priorities they're focusing on, whether it's supporting students, focusing on affordable housing, and really thinking about making sure an economy that works for all the next couple of decades, not just the next couple of years. That's really what young people are looking for, and that's what they're seeing in the Harris-Walz ticket.
It is so heartening to see a 25-year-old young first-time politician, should I be calling you that, joining me on the broadcast. Farooq Mughal, then let me ask you this, that Georgia was also one of the states which was in the reckoning till the very end in the 2020 elections, right? It was right up there. It threw up a result which was challenged by one of the candidates. In the backdrop of that, do you see that sort of overhang this time around as well? And is that something you see from the Republican campaign going forward?
Look, they're going to try to do everything possible. I mean, Georgia is a battleground state. It's all about math, right? And so if you really see how critical the state and how critical is the South Asian, the Indian American vote for Kamala Harris is, I was actually looking at the numbers. And so if we, if Trump wins Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Kamala Harris wins Michigan and North Carolina, the numbers for the electoral votes is going to be 261. And so with Georgia, for either candidate who's going to win, we'll have a final number of 277. And we need 270 to win the presidency. So every single vote of an Indian American and South Asian American in Georgia is going to play a critical role. And I see that, Ashwin and I, we talk about this, that the road to victory to the White House will be from Georgia and will be from Gwinnett County, where we have the largest diaspora of Indian Americans.
Great. And Ashwin, then let me ask you this, that Farooq was making a point about how Indian Americans and the diaspora would be very important, especially in Georgia. But there's also a trend that more and more of them are leaning Republican. So how do you address that, or how do candidates like you address that trend?
It's a great question. I think two things to keep in mind is that we always have people who are vocal minorities. So there are, of course, people on all different sides of the political spectrum. There are people who are Indian Americans who support Republicans. But we're looking at the polling data, looking at the information we saw that like around 70, 80% of Indian Americans in my district alone were planning to vote Democrat or planning to vote for me. And I think it's just keeping that in mind that most people are not that politically plugged in. They have certain values that they believe in, and they end up aligning more Democratic Party. There's a lot of folks I talk to who are Indian American, some of these people say they support Republicans, but then I ask them, what are your stances on things like gun safety, things like reproductive health care? And then often they align with Democrats on those kinds of issues. The only issues where they're worried about is they worry about the economy. And it's just a simple argument to talk about how, Trump tanked the economy in 2020 during COVID. Biden helped it bring back to normal. And all these goals and policies that Kamala Harris is bringing on are really going to make sure that we have what we need for the future.
All right.
And then the last thing, go ahead.
Wait,
I'll just, the last thing I'll just say is it's also a matter of representation. People are very excited to see someone who has the kind of background that they wish they see in public service. I would be the first Indian American elected to a legislature. My background, having gone to Stanford, Georgetown, worked in the federal government, it's the kind of thing that people see as helpful in general.
Absolutely. Very quickly, before, since we're running out of time, Farooq, which is that how often does economy come up in these discussions, and how crucial will it be, let's say, in a swing state like Georgia? Very quickly, running out of time.
So you got to realize what records. I mean, Biden administration has done a tremendous job with the infrastructure plan, where we're funding the roads and cities and putting money in people's pocket. So it's very important. And economy is a number one thing. But we also got to look at the future of healthcare. We got to look at the future. And I think Harris campaign represents the American future and who we look like as a diverse nation. So that's going to resonate a lot when people go to the poll.
All right, let's leave it there. Farooq Mughal and Ashwin Ramaswamy, thanks much for joining me on the broadcast.